Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining this session. I'm actually, as you probably may remember, I did a session on this subject at the last Scribe event, namely summons, agendas and minutes. I was somewhat disappointed that a couple of months after that event, I received from a source some information which I thought I would have shared with you had it happened to have occurred before my last talk. And John has asked me to repeat this, so I'm pleased to actually give you this anecdote, which I'm sure will amuse you to the same extent it did me, except that I'm in the middle of it. So the situation arose, and I'm starting to talk about summons, where somebody's said to me, had I seen the website of a certain council in England, and I'm not going to identify it in any way. And I said, well, no, I don't look at websites unless I have to, only 2 or 3 websites a day. And I looked at this particular website, and it said, meetings, fine, not a problem. Dear residents, you are invited to meet the parish councillors at their next meeting held at blank when matters which may be of interest to you will be discussed, including the following items. And then it was signed by the chairman. And I thought, this doesn't look quite right as a summons, but I'm sure it's not intended to be a proper summons, because as you know, councillors have to be summoned to attend a meeting. So I thought, well, this must be just something for the residents. So I plucked up courage and I rang the clerks, and I said to them, seen this on the website, I assume that there was a proper summons with an agenda for councillors. And she said, oh, yes, that's not a problem. I give out summons and the agenda at the meeting. And I said, well, no, you shouldn't really do that. There should be a full agenda. And she said, oh, no, you don't understand. Our parish council meetings are very informal. We all sit round and residents join in and we discuss matters which are of concern to them. And I said, well, this isn't really quite the way that 99% of councils do it. Upon which she said, this is the way that we've done it for the last 20 years. Show me where it says we can't do it in this way, which is always a very awkward thing to say, because English law tells you what you can do, but doesn't actually say what you can't do. Then has followed quite a correspondence about this. And it's quite interesting, actually, that the minutes of the meeting don't seem to bear any relationship to how they actually carry on. So if you think your situation is not very good, you can be well assured that there is one council in England that carries on in this particular way and has assured me that it will continue to carry on in that particular way for the immediate future, because that's the way they've done it for the last 20 years. It's all wrong, and it'll be interesting to see how it sorts itself out in due course. How they pass audits and various other things, I do not know. But there it is. Just a reminder, councillors are summoned to the meeting. Doesn't matter how friendly you want to be, how nice you want to be to people, how you want to be a genuine friendly council, as this particular one did, you councillors have to be summoned. And there is no point, in my view, in having 2 sets of summons, one to the residents and one to councillors, although I know some councils do. Must be signed by the clerk or the proper officer. Now, we've had some problems on this, because people have said to me, oh, but the clerk's away, she's on sick leave. Well, it's the person who is going to act as the clerk or proper officer, either at the time that it summons or when the minutes are taken. So the fact that your clerk is not actually present at the particular time, but you will have a locum clerk, then the summons may be signed by the clerk, but the minutes may be taken by the locum clerk. So it's the person who is actually standing in for the clerk at the particular time. The other thing is it must be sent to each councillor. Sounds straightforward. I never see any problem with that particular requirement. Some people do. But you have to get it to the councillors one way or other. If they have a blocked email account, then you can't send it by email. You may even have to put it through their door, but they must get it within the time limit. Otherwise, the meeting may not be properly called. And does it matter that the meeting is not properly called? The answer is it's becoming more and more important that local councils act in accordance with the provisions of local government acts in order to regularise their business. They are getting more and more responsibility, and that responsibility is including a lot more financial responsibility. And if it is not dealt with correctly, then there will be a great deal of trouble in due course. Lots of parish councils still think themselves as a rather friendly little body that is almost like a general community organisation. Well, it is, and I don't say it shouldn't be, but there are legal requirements. And yes, those legal requirements are on the 1972 Act, and that is a long time ago for some people, not for me, but for some people. But they are there. And to be quite honest, they ain't going to change in the near future. We may be lucky to get some clarification of some aspects of the law, as we managed to get in the recent Levelling Up Act with regard to whether you could give money to ecclesiastical purposes. But that took some doing. And some of the other points are not going to be very high on the government's agenda for the immediate future. So it becomes more important that you do actually follow what is required by legislation and statute. The fact that the clerk has dealt with it in a different way for the last 30 years is irrelevant. You have to do it as it should be done. And of course, most clerks these days are going in for training, as a result of which things are improving. But we still have odd blips like the one that I've already set out. So agendas, lots of problems on agendas. I'm not quite sure why we have so many, but must form part of the summons. So basically the councillors know what they're going to be talking about, and it should be in sufficient detail to give them at least an inkling of what they're going to be talking about. Generally, the responsibility of the clerk. The clerk may take suggestions from other people, councillors, chairman, etc., because there's no point in the council spending time discussing matters which are not of interest to the councillors. But the ultimate control of the agenda is the clerk. So that is that once the agenda is published, a councillor can't knock on the door and say, I want this included. Now, it is possible for the councillor to subsequently introduce a resolution somewhere about things on the agenda, but we will leave that for the moment. And your standing orders should also deal with how matters can go onto the agenda. But the ultimate control is that of the clerk. As I said again previously, and this is still giving rise to problems, apologies for absence. We are seeing more and more applications under the 6-month rule where councillors are being disqualified for not attending a meeting of the council or a meeting involving the council for a continuous period of 6 months. Now, to avoid that situation arising, there have to be apologies given by the council and accepted by the council. If the apologies are given and there is no note of acceptance or otherwise on the minutes, we tend to consider that those apologies have been accepted. In other words, we would look to see a negative rather than necessarily a positive. This is a little bit of a difficult area, but I think that the intention of the legislation was that the councillor should in effect disappear over the hill for a continuous period of 6 months. There are some councils that resolve not to accept any apologies for absence. They tend to be the more political councils, especially where there is a even amount of votes. We don't recommend this. It's not illegal to do or unlawful to do so, but we don't recommend it. But as I say, the minutes should ideally say apologies given by Frida for reasons which are accepted. They are supposed to state the reasons for the absence, but we've given this considerable thought in the past. And I think the answer is that it's not necessarily right that the exact reason should be recorded. So basically you could say for personal reasons, even if it's for holidays or whatever it is. The important thing is the recording of apologies for absence will usually stop the 6-month rule applying. And it's consecutive meetings. So you've got a situation, and if they don't attend the meetings, then you've got a problem where they will be automatically disqualified. It's not a question of the council approving their absences after 6 months. The guillotine comes down if they haven't been to a council meeting or a meeting representing the council for 6 months. That's it. It can't be revoked by the council itself. The clerk has to declare a vacancy, and it goes on, etc. The councillor can actually be re-elected if necessary. Can the council accept apologies for I'm not going to be available for the next 6 months? I don't like that, I have to say. I think that there should be a period, that there should not be a long period, that in fact the apology should be renewed so that sorry, I was distracted. The apology should be renewed from time to time. I don't think you should necessarily accept that for the next 6 months the councillor is not going to be available. There's nothing to stop you doing that. I don't think it's good practice to do so. Again, we have got a situation where the council cannot or should not resolve anything which is not on the agenda. That's why we don't have any other business. Some councils do have any other business to cover reports from third parties. That is probably all right, but again, you're on the slippery slope if at the end somebody says, well, this report shows that we ought to be doing A, B, and C, and then let's do A, B, and C. Not a good idea to do that. But it shouldn't be a decision that's made on that report. If a decision is required, then that should be part of another meeting, which annoyingly may mean that another meeting has to be called. But it gives the opportunity for the councillors to consider whether what the proposal was a good idea. So therefore, if you've got a report that it would be a good idea if certain works were carried out to certain areas of land, then there is an opportunity for the councils to consider whether that's a good idea or not, what sort of thing they want, and that can then go forward to the next meeting for a final discussion. So reports are fine, but not anything upon which basically a final decision is taken. I know this produces problems also frequently within the planning world, where you get late planning applications, which doesn't give you very much time to deal with. Again, this is a problem, but strictly speaking, final decisions cannot be taken, can be deferred, or maybe actually delegated to the planning committee or something else as far as that's concerned. It should not be delegated to the clerk to make a decision. Best case of that was when a planning application came in and the council resolved to delegate the reply to the clerk, as the clerk was actually a member of the anti-development group which had been formed in the village. This seemed to be rather short-sighted on them as to how the clerk was going to give a balanced view of the council. Rather surprisingly, they didn't see that at the time, but there again, in the hurly-burly of the local council world, all things are possible, especially if the item comes up late at night, or when everybody is worn out by something else. I've probably bored you previously on the parish council meeting that I went to. It started at 8 o'clock and I was item 3 on the agenda, and they got to item 3 on the agenda at 11 o'clock. I don't think that happens very often these days, and some councils do actually have automatic cut-off times. But that's up to you. Minutes. Again, we get lots of queries about minutes. And one of the favourite ones at the moment, which is that ex-councillors send formal notice to the council requiring, under data protection or GDPR or any of those, that their name is removed from all previous minutes. Now, I admit that life is too short to quite understand the arguments that they're putting forward under data protection, etc. But even if they put forward the data protection provisions, I'm afraid they are trumped by the fact that under the 1972 statute, minutes are the formal record of the meetings of the council that were held at that time, and they were signed. They cannot be altered. So therefore, the deletion of a name is actually not permitted. So they've had it. If they were a member of the council at the time, then that is what they will be identified as in the minutes. They cannot be removed or deleted. We are getting quite a few items about people requiring information to be redacted from minutes or redacted from other formal documentation. And the answer to most of these is that the statute which sets the things up requires certain documentation to be completed in certain ways. This leaves the situation under Data Protection Act to be isolated, in the sense that there is a statutory defence to data protection, that it is a regulatory requirement that signatures or names are made available. So you can quote data protection, but it doesn't actually operate in this particular way. So once the minutes are signed and once the minutes are completed, that is a formal legal record of the decision of the council on that date, and that is the decision that was made. We've always said, as most councils are that minutes are a formal record of the decisions that were made. They are not a record of the discussion that took place. They are not a record of what individual councillors stated. I was asked recently whether when a councillor requested that his remarks be included in the minutes, it was necessary to do so. The answer is no, it's not. How much detail you put in the minutes is up to the clerk who takes the minutes, but there should not be too much detail. And the important thing is the decision that is taken, and that the number of votes for or against should only be stated if a recorded vote is required. Normally, it's only necessary to say that the resolution was passed. And again, please note that if somebody abstains, that is not a vote against. It means that in effect they're not voting. So if there is a majority of the councillors who are voting that vote for or against, that motion is either passed or not passed. That basically, if you abstain, you are not voting one way or t'other. So the purpose of finding out whether the resolution has been passed or not. How do we keep the minutes? Well, originally they were kept in bound books. The requirements these days are that they can be kept by computer, but the important thing is that they are kept sequentially, and that in fact it is almost impossible to change them. The important thing is that minutes should not be changeable, so that if a resolution is passed at a meeting, then that is a record of the resolution, and you can't go back and change it. Again, so whatever it is, whether you number the minutes sequentially or how you do it is up to you. Systems such as Scribe will do that automatically for you. But the thing is that once they are done, they are done. Do not dispose of the previous minutes. If you've got hundreds of bound volumes, send them to the local record office. But do try to make sure that the minutes are available. We frequently have problems that when clerks change, that minutes are lost, and this is the main problem that we come across. So minutes need to be maintained. You need to go back and see what decision was made by the council, because the minutes may well record a binding decision of the council. We are getting quite a few queries at the moment about rescission of previous minutes or decisions of the council. Well, most standing orders provide that the council will not try to rescind or alter a resolution that's been made within a stated period of time. And that is obviously something which is organised within the council itself. But you do have to be careful, because if your resolution that you passed previously affects a third party, you may be bound by it, even if you try to rescind it later. So therefore, if you resolve to enter into a contract for grass cutting with X contractors, and the clerk is instructed to sign a contract with X contractors, then you can't subsequently in 3 months' time, unless there has been something, event which has happened in the immediate time, like X contractors going bust, decide to rescind that and go with Y contractors, because X contractors may say that is a contractual obligation of the council that has been confirmed. There has been, in contract terms, offer by X to carry out the works, and that offer has been accepted by the council. So you have the basic concept of contract law, acceptance, offer and acceptance. So you have to be careful about this. That where councils change political alliances after an election, this can lead to a considerable amount of problems. Don't know why I always tell you they lead to problems, because most of the problems land on my desk or those of my local council department, and it's what keeps us going. But I do find some of them quite frustrating. So I do feel that I am obliged to try and reduce that area of work for us if possible. Minutes have to be signed. They're signed by the chairman of the council at the meeting at which the minutes are signed. That may be the chairman, it may be who's ever stepped in for the chairman at the particular time, whoever is chairing the meeting. Don't forget that under the 72 Act, if the chairman is present at the meeting, then they must chair it. This is quite a clear provision, so that basically if they have a prejudicial interest, then our view must be that they should leave the room, and that particular item must be chaired by somebody else. If they stay in the room and declare a prejudicial interest, then I think they still have to chair the meeting, thus considerable concern, and we then have a problem with whether they have their casting vote or not. If they're not in the room, the person who is chairing the meeting at that time has the casting vote. Now, according to my clock, we're exactly 1:30, and I see we're getting lots of things in the chat. So I'd better start looking and see what we're doing on that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Roger. Yes, so brilliant presentation. We've got a few questions coming in now. So we'll go ahead and read them out. So the first one we have, I'm not sure who it's from. It just says Town Clerk. They say, can you confirm if councillors should provide a reason for absence?
The answer is yes, they should provide a reason for absence, but that needn't necessarily be recorded verbatim in the minutes.
Lovely.
Cool. We have a question from Helen Johnson. She's saying, if we note apologies rather than approve them, can this then count towards their 6 months not attending?
This is the sort of question I do love, because why don't you accept apologies? If you just note them, I think there is an implication that you have accepted them. I think anything other than a rejection of the apology must be in some way an acceptance. I know that sounds a little bit peculiar, but I think it must be right. You are supposed to approve them. If you've noted them, that doesn't necessarily denote complete approval, but I think it shows that you've taken note of them. I think we've got to get clarity on this point, and I think you either accept them or you don't accept them, and you leave it at that. So you could say noted but not accepted.
Good. I have to see another question related. I put a pot from Mike McDonald. Oh, it's gone wild now. I put apologies were received. Does this provide a workaround?
Apologies were received. Again, it's almost the same answers I gave last time. That basically you need to either accept them or not.
Good. We got some more. Oh yeah, here we go.
Yep. So another question from Jane. Isn't it the reason for Oh, isn't it the reason for apology that needs to be approved rather than just the council noting or even accepting the apology?
Yes, that is true. Well, in effect, it's a two-header. It has to be approved, and the reason have to be approved as well. So it's really a two-header thing. That by approving it, you are approving both the apologies and the reason for them.
Cool. Mandy is asking, what about councillors who haven't been at the previous meeting? Can they vote to accept the minutes?
Yes, yes, they can do. Yes, they. Most councillors don't, but yes, they can do it. Yeah.
Perfect. And another one from Pamela. They're coming in quick and very fast. So, do apologies have to be provided in a certain way or by a certain time? Assume this will be each council's own decision, but just wanted to check.
It is the councillor's own decision. As far as that's concerned, normally we say that they should be at least produced before the start of the meeting. Ideally, that would be probably the day before, that, I can't come because. But yeah, it is the decision of the, unless it says in the standing orders that they have to be produced in a particular time. I think it's unlikely, but almost possible.
Great. I have a question from Adele Waddington. I've seen on agendas to receive an update from XX, decision required in brackets. Is this acceptable as an agenda item? And she caveats that's not her agenda.
Yeah, no, no. The council must have some idea of what is going to be discussed and what they're going to make a decision on. It may be couched in general terms, which is something like to make a decision on the report which has been circulated or something like that. But generally speaking, the councillor, on receiving it on his doormat or on his machine, must know what he's going to make a decision on, even if he wasn't at the previous meeting.
Perfect. Another one from Michelle asking, could you explain the process for removing a councillor from committees due to their conduct?
Yeah, this is the last bastion that the parish council has when coming to taking action against councillors. If a councillor is on a committee, the parish council, the local council, has still got the power to reconstitute that committee. And so really what they can do, other than the finance committee, where all members of the council have to be members of that committee, but they can reconstitute it to remove from the committee any person who is causing difficulty. That is by resolution of the council. So what would happen would be that the council itself would resolve that the constitution of the committee in the future would be A, B, C, and D, but not include E. So that's how it would be done. It would be done by resolution. The corollary to this is that when appointing the committee originally, you would be in effect appointing the committee for the next year, but you don't actually say so. So basically, you don't say Councillor Fred is appointed for the next 5 years. You just appoint Councillor Fred, so that you do have discretion in due course if he goes off the rails to remove him.
Okay, more of a sort of technical question on formatting. Richard asks, is there a standard set way to number minutes throughout the whole year?
It varies from council to council, and as to how they do it. The important thing is it must be sequentially done. I mean, some do it by reference to the month, but otherwise there isn't a set formula as such. In the old days, when they were handwritten books, then you just carried on the numbering. But we have seen a number of older books where people get confused when the number gets too great. So you find you've got whole areas missing. You go from 1811, and then the next one is 811, and then we get queries of what happened to the one in between. But no, there's no set thing. Basically, it's just that you have to have them sequentially numbered. It's easier with computers these days.
Lovely. And Gemma has a question on agenda supporting papers intended for councillors to make informed decisions. Should all of these documents be available for public and uploaded with the agenda to the council website?
It's reckoned to be good practice to do so. One can understand sometimes that if you've got an enormous amount of documentation, it's not necessarily practical to do so. In which case, one can say that copies are available. But again, it should be some idea that the members of the public have some idea about what's being discussed. Generally, the papers can be attached, but you don't, because to be quite honest, a lot of people, general public, wouldn't have sufficient computer capacity to download some of this anyway. So if it's very big, then there isn't very much point, but it should be made available if possible.
Questions are still coming in thick and fast. Yes, so we got Julie. For good practice, how long would a public partition session be? Is there a legal time frame?
No. The public participation normally is about 15 minutes, and you need good chairing to make sure that members of the public actually talk for a limited amount of time, and that basically it's not a question and answer session, it's merely statements from the council, and you basically there is no limited time. If you've got a very popular item on the agenda, you might want to have a longer time so that people can make their views known. But no, there is no particular session. It's down to good chairmanship, so you can keep it. You can keep it in mind, and whether it's before, after, or during the council meeting is entirely up to the council. I think you've got to listen to members of the public and see what happens. If it's a very popular thing, it may well be that you would have it before an item rather than in the middle. Very quickly, another very short anecdote. I went to a parish council meeting some years ago. The council was discussing a particular planning application. The man sitting next to me was jumping up and down, and at the time, and he trying to attract the chairman's view, and the chairman kept on saying to him, "You have to wait to the public participation at the end of the meeting," and refused to have anything to do with him. At the end of the meeting, he just got up and said, "I merely wanted to show to you that you're actually discussing the wrong property." Therefore,
Nice.
you have to discretion. There we are. Yep, next question.
Brilliant. Next one is from Anne. We have a long-standing councillor who, due to health reasons, forgets meetings even when I send a reminder on the day. How do I record the absence?
Well, you don't necessarily record the absence. You just record that absent. No apologies, nothing, just absent.
Yeah.
Good.
That would count then towards the 6 months.
Cool. We got 4 more minutes. I'm just going to jump down to the bottom of this list because Jane said lots of people have asked this one from Steve McNay. Must all members be on the finance committee? All members must decide on key decisions preset, but on the finance committee, question mark.
Well, normally the finance committee does make the decision regarding precept. So we normally have most people. I think technically it's correct that apart from setting the precept, all members needn't be on the finance committee. But what we find is that the finance committee then fixes the precept without remembering that it has to be all members. So that's why I say what I say. The other thing is you can't have any outside people on the finance committee.
Cool.
Perfect.
Right.
Yep, so we've got a few more, we've got time. So one from Jackie, if the clerk is absent, can a council member step in and take minutes?
Yes, they don't get paid for it, but they can take the minutes. Yeah.
Perfect.
Tanya asks about confidential minutes. Can this be clarified? I know there is no such thing as confidential minute, but how do you recommend sensitive decisions worded in minutes?
As vaguely as possible. Yeah, there is no such thing as confidential minutes, but you do record that whatever decision has been taken on it or not taken, as the case may be, but you don't give any real details as such. So yeah, you have to be very careful with this. So I mean, if it's a question of settling a claim, for instance, then there is no need to actually record what is there until the claim is settled. In which case, you would record that the council has decided to make an offer to settle the claim, but you would then record when that offer was accepted what the amount, etc., was. So you don't prejudice the council's position by giving too much information. It's a difficult dividing line.